That morning, Aramis was focused on one of the most significant court cases of her career, a high-profile case that was poised to make headlines. As a black woman serving as a state attorney, she faced numerous challenges, but she was determined to see this case through to its successful conclusion. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. The case at hand was particularly critical. It involved securing a life imprisonment sentence for the notorious leader of a human trafficking ring. Aramis had meticulously prepared for this moment, ensuring that every piece of evidence and every legal argument was perfectly aligned. She had organized everything she needed to bring with her directly in her car, intending to bypass her office and head straight to the courthouse. Her focus was unwavering as she drove along the bustling, traffic-filled road. The city was alive with activity, but Aramis was singularly fixated on her destination. Just as she was mentally rehearsing her arguments and the pivotal points she would make in court, her concentration was abruptly shattered by the flashing blue and red lights of a police car appearing in her rearview mirror. The sudden blare of the siren cut through the air, a jarring and authoritative sound that demanded her immediate attention. The commanding voice over the loudspeaker instructed her to pull over, leaving her bewildered and anxious. Aramis was taken aback by this unexpected disruption. She could not fathom why she was being pulled over. She was certain she had adhered to all traffic laws. She hadn't exceeded the speed limit, nor had she committed any driving infractions that would warrant police intervention. Despite her confusion and rising frustration, she complied with the officer's command, pulling her vehicle to the side of the road. As she came to a halt, her mind raced. The weight of the day's responsibilities and the looming court case were momentarily overshadowed by the uncertainty of the situation she found herself in. Little did she know, this encounter with the officer was about to take an unexpected turn, and the lesson she would teach him would leave a lasting impression. She pulled over to the side of the road, the gravel crunching under her tires as she came to a halt. With a deep breath, she rolled down her window, feeling a knot of apprehension in her stomach. Through the rearview mirror, she watched as the officer exited his squad car and began walking toward her vehicle. The officer's stern demeanor was immediately apparent. His face was set in a frown, and his expression was as hard as granite. As he drew nearer, she couldn't help but wonder what could have put him in such a sour mood. She glanced down at her hands on the steering wheel, feeling a pang of unease. She was certain she hadn't done anything wrong and couldn't fathom why she was receiving such a frosty reception from the officer. Pushing her discomfort aside, she watched as he leaned against the open window of her car. He lowered his head to come nearly eye level with her, a move that made her feel even more uneasy. She took a moment to glance at his uniform and saw the name tag clipped to his shirt read Officer Theo. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she asked him why he had pulled her over. With a hint of defensiveness, she told him that she hadn't broken any laws and couldn't understand the reason for his intervention. Officer Theo's response was curt. He said he found her vehicle to be suspicious and needed to inspect it further. He explained that he had tagged her license plates, and when he ran them through the system, they returned no information. This lack of data, he said, made him even more suspicious that there might be something amiss. Aramis was taken aback and confused by his explanation. She struggled to grasp why he felt it necessary to tag her license plates in the first place. Her frustration mounted, and she demanded to know what specifically about her car had led him to believe it warranted such scrutiny. Officer Theo responded that tagging license plates was a routine procedure for law enforcement. He mentioned that it was a method used to determine whether vehicles were stolen or involved in any criminal activities. He continued, telling her that he also had concerns about the tint on her windows. Although he admitted he lacked the proper equipment to measure the tint accurately, he insisted that the darkness of the windows was enough to prevent him from seeing inside. In his view, this opacity suggested she might be concealing something, further fueling his suspicion. Aramis listened intently as Theo spoke, her mind racing to process the surreal situation unfolding before her. Each word he uttered seemed meticulously rehearsed, like a performance she was witnessing rather than a spontaneous conversation. The sense of precision in his speech made her question the randomness of their encounter. What had initially seemed like a routine traffic stop now felt eerily preordained. She couldn't shake the feeling that Theo had stopped her for reasons beyond a mere traffic violation. As she was grappling with these thoughts, Theo abruptly cut her off. He informed her with an authoritative tone that he could not let her leave until he had thoroughly investigated the matter. He needed to ascertain that she had not stolen the car and confirm that she was not involved in any criminal activity. His words were cold and uncompromising, and he instructed her, still in shock and speechless, to exit the vehicle. Theo's decision was clear. He intended to take her to the police station for further questioning. Aramis's jaw dropped as she processed the gravity of Theo's command. The situation was spiraling out of control more swiftly than she could have ever anticipated. At this stage in her career, Aramis had never imagined she would be thrust into such a dire and unsettling predicament. Her role as a state attorney was highly prestigious and widely discussed across the nation. Despite the challenges of being a black woman in a field often dominated by others, she had risen to prominence, breaking barriers to become the first black state attorney in her state. This achievement was not only a testament to her resilience and dedication, but also a source of immense personal pride. Yet, amidst this success, she had always remained grounded, never allowing her accomplishments to cloud her judgment or sense of humility. While she was undeniably pleased with the accomplishments she had achieved throughout her career, she found an even deeper sense of satisfaction in the act of charging hardened criminals and securing their convictions. There was an unparalleled thrill she experienced in putting dangerous criminals behind bars. This aspect of her job was what she cherished the most. She relished the process of collaborating with law enforcement officers to meticulously uncover evidence, engaging in rigorous questioning of defendants in the courtroom, and, perhaps above all, witnessing the moment of justice when judges delivered their sentences and brought down the gavel with a definitive, resonant thud. Her passion for her work was profound and unwavering. She had always envisioned her career advancing smoothly, guided by her commitment to justice and her dedication to upholding the law. However, this perception began to shift several years ago when her relationship with the police started to unravel. The friction began when she made a significant and controversial decision. She resolved never to seek the death penalty in any of her cases. To her, capital punishment was not just a legal matter but a moral issue. She viewed it as an archaic and inhumane practice that should be abolished entirely. Her commitment to this stance was further reinforced by a troubling observation she had made: the overwhelming majority of those on death row were black. This statistic underscored a glaring issue of systemic bias within the justice system. She was deeply troubled by the fact that black offenders were almost 3 times more likely to be arrested compared to their white counterparts. From that pivotal moment onward, she was resolute in her decision. Regardless of the nature of the crime or the race of the defendant, she vowed that she would not pursue the death penalty. Her conviction was rooted in a belief in fairness and equality, and she was determined to stand by her principles, even if it meant facing increasing tensions and challenges in her professional relationships. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Her decision to never seek the death penalty had stirred considerable controversy and debate. This bold stance had elicited a wide range of reactions. Some criticized her vehemently, accusing her of being too lenient, while others praised her for her principled stand. The most challenging moment for Aramis came shortly after she publicly declared her position. A particularly harrowing case landed on her desk, one that would test her resolve in ways she hadn't anticipated. Nate, a black man, had been arrested under severe charges for allegedly assaulting a police officer, Officer Steve. The details of the incident were both shocking and disturbing. Officer Steve had suffered horrific injuries, so severe that he had lost both his legs. According to the initial reports from the arresting officers, Nate was accused of torturing and assaulting Steve. The officers claimed that Nate had not only beaten Steve but had also run him over with his car, causing crippling injuries. Given the gravity of the situation and the nature of the crime and attack on a police officer, there was immense pressure for Aramis to ensure that Nate received nothing less than a life imprisonment sentence. This case was particularly challenging for her, as she was deeply committed to achieving justice. She understood the gravity of Nate's alleged actions and was determined to see that justice was served, but she also knew she had to approach the case with a clear and impartial mind. However, as Aramis delved into the investigation, she discovered a series of discrepancies that would profoundly alter her understanding of the case. Despite the initial claims, evidence revealed that while Steve had indeed been run over by a car, there were no signs of beating or torture. This discovery led her to question the credibility of the initial reports. Upon examining Nate, Aramis found him to be the one with severe injuries. He bore multiple marks from beatings, suggesting he had been on the receiving end of violence. The investigation took an unexpected turn. Aramis uncovered that the police officers involved, Steve and his partner Drew, had fabricated the details of the incident. The truth revealed that Steve and Drew had been attempting to make an unlawful arrest. Nate had been minding his own business, heading home when the officers confronted him. They had started harassing him, accusing him of scouting the neighborhood for future criminal activity. Despite Nate's repeated explanations that he was a resident of the area, the officers ignored his pleas. They aggressively tried to subdue him, resorting to excessive force, striking, kicking, and threatening him to keep quiet. The case that had initially seemed straightforward was now enveloped in layers of deception and abuse of power. Aramis faced the daunting task of navigating this complex situation, driven by her commitment to uncover the truth and uphold justice, no matter where the evidence led her. However, Nate eventually managed to wriggle free from their grasp and broke into a desperate run. It was a frantic, life-or-death sprint, and the officers, determined to catch him, pursued relentlessly. As Nate fled, he crossed a road and hurled himself over a fence, his sole focus being to escape from the pursuing cops, who seemed intent on ending his life. Unfortunately, Steve, who had been hot on Nate's heels, found himself in the middle of the road just as a car sped by. He didn't see the vehicle in time, and there was no opportunity to evade the collision. The crash was devastating. Drew managed to apprehend Nate eventually, but the accident had catastrophic consequences for Steve. He was left with severe injuries that resulted in permanent disability, confining him to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. In the aftermath, Steve and Drew faced a difficult decision. They could have reported the incident as a tragic consequence of an arrest gone awry, but their anger and desire for retribution led them down a darker path. Instead of seeking justice, they aimed to make Nate suffer for their misfortunes. They fabricated a story, accusing Nate of violently assaulting and torturing Steve before running him over with the car. Fortunately, Aramis was known for her thorough investigations and commitment to uncovering the truth in every case she handled. She delved deeply into the events surrounding the incident and uncovered the discrepancies in Steve and Drew's account. The truth emerged, revealing the officers' misconduct and the falsehoods in their accusations. Aramis could not, in good conscience, comply with the demands to impose a life sentence on an innocent man. The thought of condemning someone to life imprisonment, especially an innocent person, was abhorrent to her and contrary to everything she stood for. Steve and Drew exerted every effort they could muster to persuade Aramis to change her stance, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. The stakes were high, and their fear was palpable. If Aramis carried through with her decision, it would become glaringly evident that they had harassed an innocent man and attempted to imprison him without just cause. The thought of their misconduct being exposed was terrifying. Despite the pressure, including more officers approaching her in an attempt to sway her opinion, many of whom used intimidation tactics, Aramis stood her ground. Her determination to see justice served was unwavering. When the case finally reached court, Aramis's commitment to the truth prevailed. She successfully cleared Nate's name, which inevitably implicated Steve and Drew in their wrongful actions. The consequences for the officers were severe. Drew faced a drastic demotion that nearly ruined his career, and it was nothing short of a miracle that he retained his job at all. Steve's situation was equally grim. His benefits as a disabled officer were suspended for a daunting 3 years. The case attracted widespread attention and went viral, casting Aramis into the limelight as the courageous woman who fearlessly challenged an entire police force. Her actions earned her both admiration and animosity. Many officers harbored resentment toward her, though most had never interacted with her. Despite the hostility directed her way, Aramis remained steadfast in her mission. Her primary concern was ensuring that justice was served, regardless of the status or position of those involved. She took solace in knowing that she had upheld her principles and, in doing so, had prevented an innocent man from being unjustly imprisoned. After everything that had transpired, Aramis was taken aback when the police officer who had stopped her that morning began to exhibit a distinctly rude and unprofessional demeanor. It became increasingly clear that his behavior was not merely a coincidence, but rather a deliberate act of retribution. His hostile treatment seemed to be a personal vendetta, a way for him to exact some form of revenge for the work she had done. It was evident that Theo harbored a deep-seated resentment towards her, feeling that she had wronged his fellow officers. His lack of respect for her and her professional accomplishments was palpable, and he appeared determined to intimidate her and ruin her day. As Aramis was being forcibly removed from her vehicle, Theo's sneering attitude was impossible to ignore. His actions were part of a larger scheme aimed at coercing her into admitting to a crime she had not committed. The tension between them was almost tangible, with Theo's growing hostility underscoring his contempt for her. It was clear that he viewed her as a significant threat to his colleagues and was resolute in making her life difficult as a form of retaliation. Just as she was on the brink of being taken to the station, Aramis confronted a harsh and unsettling reality. This confrontation was not merely a personal affront, but symbolized a more extensive issue of corruption and abuse of power within the police force. Her career, which had been dedicated to the pursuit of justice, was now under direct and aggressive attack. The situation revealed a troubling dimension of the systemic problem she had been fighting against, and she realized that her struggle was not just about her reputation, but also about confronting a broader pattern of misconduct and injustice within the system. Despite the mounting pressure and the unjust treatment she faced, Aramis remained resolute. She was determined not to be intimidated or silenced. Her commitment to fighting for justice and upholding the law had never been stronger. Aramis understood that her decisions and actions would carry significant consequences, but she was prepared to confront any obstacles that came her way. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Amid this high-stakes situation, Aramis found herself in an unexpected confrontation with Theo, the officer who had pulled her over. As the tension between them escalated, Aramis decided to test Theo's knowledge of her identity. With a steely determination, she asked him if he knew who she was. The way she posed the question immediately unsettled Theo. His face registered a mix of fear and confusion as he hesitated, his mind racing to process the gravity of the moment. Theo's stammering response and his inability to articulate a coherent answer revealed his growing anxiety. Theo's eyes darted nervously, searching for an escape route as he swallowed hard. After a few agonizing moments, he managed to stutter out, I don't know." Aramis locked eyes with him, her gaze unwavering and intense. "I'm a state attorney," she declared firmly, "and I know that everything about this stop is illegal." She explained that her license plates were confidential, a precaution to ensure that the criminals she prosecuted couldn't use them to track her movements or pose a threat to her family. The implication was clear. Theo's actions had not only breached legal protocol, but had also endangered her safety. With a deliberate calmness, Aramis handed Theo her business card. Theo took the card, his hands trembling slightly as he examined it. As he read her name and title, his face went pale, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. His eyes widened in shock as he processed the reality of who he was dealing with. The recognition of her identity hit him like a thunderclap, leaving him visibly shaken and unable to maintain his previous bravado. The weight of his actions and their potential repercussions were now painfully clear to him. Theo's initial bravery evaporated, giving way to sheer terror. He had pulled her over without knowing who she was, driven by a hidden agenda that now loomed ominously over him. If he had succeeded in taking her to his station, he would have unwittingly facilitated a sinister plot designed to delay her. The state attorney's eyes narrowed, her gaze piercing and intense. "Who sent you to arrest me?" she demanded, her voice laced with authority and urgency. "Who's behind this illegal stop?" She moved closer, her presence exuding power and determination. "Tell me the truth, officer, right now." Theo's initial instinct was to deny any wrongdoing, claiming that the stop was merely a routine check. But Aramis's unwavering stare and the threat of an internal investigation quickly shattered his resolve. She warned him that any misconduct uncovered during the investigation would result in the immediate loss of his badge. Fear gripped Theo, and he faltered under the pressure. With a trembling voice, he confessed that he had been instructed to arrest her by a friend. This friend had provided him with details about the make and model of her car, falsely labeling it as stolen. He revealed that he had been told Aramis was a dangerous individual who needed to be dealt with decisively. Aramis pressed for the name of this friend, her gaze unyielding. Theo, now visibly shaken, admitted that the friend was Drew, an officer involved in a case she had previously investigated. Aramis's eyes widened in disbelief as she comprehended the depth of Drew's grudge against her. She realized with a sinking feeling that Drew had attempted to sabotage her, a move that could have severely compromised her case. Theo, who had been uncomfortably silent until now, revealed that Drew had been his superior at the police academy and that they had kept in touch after their graduation. Drew had manipulated Theo, convincing him that arresting Aramis would lead to a career boost. With a mix of frustration and sadness, Aramis shook her head. "You've been deceived and used as a pawn in Drew and Steve's sinister scheme," she said, her voice tinged with disappointment. Theo's face flushed with remorse as he began to apologize profusely. He insisted that he had no idea who she was and vowed that had he known her identity, he would never have been involved. Despite his heartfelt apologies, Aramis did not soften her stance. She made it clear that while he had been misled, his readiness to arrest her without proper investigation was inexcusable. He had taken someone's word at face value and was prepared to incarcerate an innocent woman based solely on unfounded accusations. His readiness to jump to conclusions about her before even pulling her over was something she could not easily overlook. Reluctantly, Theo had no choice but to release her. However, Aramis made it clear that this was not the end. She assured him that he would hear from her again, having already noted his name and badge number. She had every intention of holding him accountable for his part in the debacle. Driving to the courthouse, Aramis arrived just in time for the trial. The proceedings were a resounding success, sparking widespread media attention. The conviction of the notorious trafficker was celebrated by many as a significant victory, and Aramis's role in ensuring justice was upheld did not go unnoticed. The trial not only validated her commitment to justice, but also marked a significant step forward in her ongoing battle against corruption and misconduct. The following day, Aramis took decisive action by filing a formal report against Officers Steve and Drew. An investigation was promptly launched, revealing that Drew and Steve had been the orchestrators behind the illegal pullover. Their grudge against her had been brewing ever since she had exonerated Nate. They resented the fact that while they faced repercussions for their actions, Aramis continued to advance and achieve greater success. Obsessed with their vendetta, they had kept a close watch on her, seizing what they believed would be the perfect opportunity to exact their revenge through her current high-profile case. Their plan was calculated and malicious. They knew that if Aramis missed her court appearance on the final day of the trial, it would deal a severe blow to her case. The situation would be even worse if it came to light that her absence was due to her arrest. They intended to use this scenario to tarnish her reputation, aiming to portray her as untrustworthy and incompetent in the public eye. Their goal was to undermine her career completely. However, their scheme was thwarted, and their attempts to sabotage her failed. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. The consequences for Drew and Steve were severe. This incident marked Drew's second major infraction, leading to his immediate dismissal from the force. Steve, too, faced significant repercussions, being permanently stripped of the benefits he had enjoyed as a police officer. Theo, on the other hand, was fortunate. It was established that he had acted under orders and was unaware of the full extent of the scheme. As a result, he received a 3-month suspension. This period of suspension was intended to serve as a stern warning, and Theo vowed to undertake thorough investigations in the future to ensure that he made informed decisions and arrests. The media soon picked up on Aramis's ordeal, and the story garnered extensive coverage. The situation was further amplified when body cam footage of the entire interaction between Aramis and Theo was leaked, providing the public with an unfiltered view of the events that had transpired. This revelation helped to clear Aramis's name and showcased the misconduct of those involved. Aramis was relieved and gratified by the outcome. The experience reaffirmed her resolve to continue her relentless pursuit of justice for all. She remained steadfast in her commitment, vowing not to be intimidated by those who sought to undermine her. Her determination was unshaken. If anyone attempted to come after her again, she would ensure they faced consequences. She was resolute in her belief that no one would be able to deter her from her mission of justice. As we conclude today's video, I'd love to hear from you. Take a moment to reflect on the story we've shared. What insights have you gained? How has it impacted your perspective? Please share in the comments below one important lesson you've learned and how you plan to incorporate it into your life. Your feedback and reflections are valuable to us and can help others who may be facing similar challenges. If you found this video meaningful, please take a moment to leave a comment, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps us continue creating content that inspires and uplifts us. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.